my here's my analysis.
Sure.
We are dealing with a situation where the end of materialism is
Yeah.
over. I mean, the period of materialism is over.
Right.
And the reason I say this is because if you think back to the Renaissance, and
Mm-hmm.
particularly what we call the Age of Reason and
Yes.
the Age of Science, where you have
Yes.
people like, Galileo and Copernicus finding out that there are certain demonstrable truths using instruments like telescopes and magnifying glasses and things like that, and indeed in using chemistry,
Right.
that the world is not the same as what the religious authorities said it was.
Sure.
In other words, there's a difference between what you're told and what you can find out for yourself.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, the tools that they're using and the shall we call the Zen, Venn theory is that you have a set of reality points. So their set
Mm-hmm.
of reality points was still limited to the materialistic. So the whole scientific method was born, in the 14th and 15th centuries, and the whole idea is if you can measure it, if you can calculate it, if you can record it, then it's true,
Mm-hmm.
and everything else is not. Everything
Right.
else is superstition. Everything else is just belief. Everything else is just religion,
Sure.
and that is the world in which we've been living. However, there's one factor that was not part of the Venn diagram, and that is that our actual perceptions have been artificially limited. So when you talk about the world of science and you talk about the five senses, and that you're using the machinery or the tools of science to make your theories and your postulates and your discoveries.
Right.
Well, you're limited by what you can actually perceive with your own body and your own mind. Well, not your mind, because your mind goes beyond the body. But what I'm trying to say is you're limited by what your senses, as you know them, can give you information about.
Right.
Right? Now, what if there was an outside cage encapsulating you, preventing you from using certain senses,
Okay.
preventing you from using certain abilities?
Mm-hmm.
How could you, for example, live in a world where you didn't believe in such a thing as heat?
Right.
Like we know today that you can see heat.
Mm-hmm.
It's called infrared radiation, right?
Right.
Well, what if you lived in a world where that was impossible? Because you can't see that. Now, today we still can't see it with our native eyes, but we can discover it with equipment, with machinery, and we can see
Sure.
through that equipment and machinery, and then therefore we can believe it. So we've
Right.
got technology to help us.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe in that, and that's called science. Now, what if you could see heat without the need of machines or technological aids? What kind of world would you live in then? Well, you'd live in the world
Well,
of cats and dogs. They can see
right.
heat.
Right.
What if your hearing was expanded beyond the 20 to 20,000 kilohertz that's commonly ascribed to be human ability to hear? Well, you'd live in the world of other animals, wouldn't you? You see?
Yeah.
In other
You
words,
become bats.
well, we might be able to use the bats use a certain kind of sonar to detect their prey, the
Right.
mosquito or other insects. So they bounce, they go tit 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 and send out sound waves to bounce off their prey, which and then therefore they can echolocate them, just like a
Yeah.
submarine is echolocated with sonar from warships floating above it.
Sure.
Well, I believe, and this is kind of a roundabout way of saying it, I believe we're entering the age where it's no longer technology and science that's leading the way,
Mm-hmm.
but it's our own increased internal capabilities that's going to lead the way.
Mm-hmm.
What if you could feel like some children can, that a person who entered the room was good or evil?
Right.
What if you could see around a person their past life history encoded in a matrix of I don't know, photons or some other medium that we maybe not even able to describe with our current vocabulary? What if there was a way to see the history of an object, where it's been, where it's coming from, and even a way to correlate where it's going,
Sure.
or a human, or a life form?
Uh-huh.
What if we could actually do all those things without the need of a equipment or of a technology? What kind of world would we live in then?
It would be an entirely new world.
It would.
That, yeah. Well, not new in a sense that, like completely. Well, it is gonna be foreign to us who
Certainly.
have been who our senses has long been suppressed
That's the point.
or confined, okay, or
Long
limited.
suppressed and confined. In other words,
Right.
not naturally the situation of life on this planet.
Right.
Now, how was
But,
it suppressed and how was it
then-
confined?
Well, we are limited to, well, okay. The definition of science back several hundred years ago, the disciplines and so on are pretty much further confined or restrict to our ability of the five senses to sense things surrounding
Right.
us, which is very limiting. For example, hearing is only good for from 20 to 20 kilohertz.
Right.
Eyesight's only good for the color spectrum from blue all the way to red.
Right.
You cannot see infrared, but you cannot see ultraviolet.
Exactly.
Okay,
But we know
you
it
can only
exists.
smell certain things, but you cannot smell beyond that. Those some other things.
That's right. And some
So
people have
you-
more ability in those areas than others. So does that mean that there's a different reality for them? Does that mean that the whole world is suddenly different just because somebody can hear more, see more, taste more, touch more? Of course not. That's ridiculous. That's like saying that dogs live in a different universe than we do because they can hear at a higher frequency. No, it's nonsense. In other words, the entire world out there that's not limited by our ability to perceive it. So how do we get off thinking that the world that we see and hear and touch and taste is all there is? With some
Well-
minor additions like maybe EF night vision goggles or a telescope or a microscope. In other words, pretty minor additions which are dependent on technology. Why do we think that?
Because we've been conditioned to believe in all that.
Precisely. And not only that, it's possible that we have been artificially suppressed in our abilities to perceive the rest of what we call the multiverse,
Yes.
which might be a perfectly natural thing for us to do since birth. In other words, we're born to have that ability, but it's been taken from us nefariously.
Sure.
It's been suppressed by outside forces that have had a reason to want us to be dumbed down, to be limited, to be unable to discover the world around us naturally.
Yes.
This is not some kind of magic I'm talking about. This is just a normal, organic situation here.
Mhm.
Well, could it be that we are at current living in a situation where some restrictions are being removed, where some suppressive technologies have been destroyed, where a dampening field that's been keeping us blind
Mhm.
is no longer functioning? In other words, it's more than just an intellectual wake-up. It's actually a physical emotional, and some might say spiritual wake up that we're going to experience in the very, very near future and have been experiencing in the last few years.
Sure.
Well, I think that if that indeed is the case, then we are on the threshold of a new world,
Right.
a new life,
Yes.
a new way of relating.
A new, if not revolutionary, way to perceive the world.
Exactly. And it's no different than the revolutionary way of perceiving reality that took place in the so-called Enlightenment or the scientific revolution of the 14th, 15th, and 16th centuries. Took 300 years for that to happen, but in this case, it's going to take 3 years. And that's just simply because of more advanced society, more advanced culture, more advanced civilization, more advanced technology, so we can do it faster.
Yeah.
Hold on to your seatbelt. Ride could get bumpy. Just like some people couldn't handle the thought that the Earth revolved around the sun. Oh my God, that's heresy. Everybody knows that the universe revolves around the Earth, so they said in the Vatican. And you'd get put in jail if you tried to, think otherwise. That's what Copernicus found out. He was under house arrest for 20 years.
Yes. Well, it's going to be revolutionary in a sense that a lot of things that we've been taught for many generations will be flipped. Let's just use that word, flipped. Meaning that it has to be questioned, re-questioned.
Yep.
And it has to be redefined, if not re-answered.
Well, a good example is we've had some things in the real world lately in our public consciousness that have been flipped. We've just found out that a social, what we call the agora, or the marketplace of ideas, where everybody meets and talks and chats and maybe buys some vegetables. What was the name of it? Oh yeah, Twitter. That's the public meeting place or the forum of so-called societal interaction, where people form their collective belief systems, right?
Right.
Well, now we've recently found out that it was manipulated and that the government actually had controls in place, not allowing people to speak freely.
Of course.
Now, if you went to the mall and sat down with whoever you might meet there and ordered some food and had a discourse with them, would you feel that it was an invasion of your sovereignty and dignity for someone to come up and tell you to shut the fuck up and stop talking about that? Of course you would. But what if you were on a public forum that was not direct but was virtual, which was these Twitter systems and Facebook systems or whatever you want to call them, and what if that was done but you didn't even know it?
Right. Would
you feel affronted? Would you feel that your freedoms had been besmirched? Would you feel that you had been attacked or assaulted? Well, I think some people would, especially if they were talking to their loved ones, or they were talking to their close friends, or they were talking to their family members, or maybe they were trying to assert their democracy.
Sure.
Their freedoms and their rights. But those were being secretly controlled behind the scenes. Now, we've just discovered that was true. The evidence is there.
Yep.
Is this happy news? Are people going to accept that? Isn't free will something to fight for and die for in multiple wars over human history? This is the kind of situation that we're in right now. We're beginning to be faced with the truth that we haven't been free. We haven't been able to express ourselves in even at a personal level with your best friend or your family member, because there was somebody there cutting you off and crushing your free will. Well, I wouldn't call that life. I would call that slavery.
Indeed.
Now, what the WEF are we going to do about it? Well, some people are going to do something about it in a constructive way, and one of the ways to do it is, first of all, to realize that it's happening, and second of all, to create new systems,
Sure.
and to create a new society, and to turn their back on all the so-called political parties or government institutions, which are actually just the chains that bind us in our slavery.
Of course.
Stop.
Mm-hmm.